So War Tycoon as a whole does feel like a very straightforward game that is actually pretty easy to understand. However, you would be surprised because in this video, guys, I will be showing you some secrets about your favorite vehicles, which a lot of you have probably not noticed. However, a lot of them will be talking about some features which the vehicles actually have attached to them. However, they're not very functional in game, or just overall secrets which I was able to notice as of my time of playing this game. So anyway, let's just jump right into it. Alrighty, so the first one over here is actually going to be featuring one of your favorite helicopters, which is going to be the Ka-52, but also the Mi-24 Hind. So as we know, the Ka-52 has armor-piercing bullets from its guns that it's actually able to shoot. However, one very funny thing which I was actually able to notice is that the gun pods over here have exactly 2 barrels on each side. However, if we're actually going to be shooting with the Ka-52, as you guys can clearly see, we are only firing from 1 barrel essentially per side, or in fact, if we take a clearer look, we're actually shooting from the midpoint of both of these barrels, which realistically just makes absolutely no sense. But in reality, the way that these pods should actually be working is that we should be able to pretty much just shoot 4 at once, or be able to shoot the 4 in turn. So for example, we shoot 1 from the left and then we shoot 1 bullet from the right, which is the way that it should be working. However, in War Tycoon, this isn't actually particularly the case, and 2 reasons why I believe this was done is 1, probably for balancing, and the second reason, the developers were just feeling a little bit lazy in terms of creating this vehicle. This is a pretty old one, however, I'd like to talk about this. And the reason why I say the developers probably felt a little bit lazy is because literally just making this function properly wouldn't be a problem in terms of balancing, because all you could do is nerf the fire rate of one gun by 50% and just make the other gun also shoot. So essentially, the whole entire thing would be working normally, but the vehicle would actually be working a lot more realistically. Anyway, this is actually exactly the same thing with the Mi-24 Hind, and I'm gonna be quickly showing it to you too. So, the Mi-24 has exactly 2 barrels on each side as well, because as you guys can see, this is barrel 1, barrel 2, it shoots from these 2 as well, so that's going to be 4, and then we have 2 more, which is going to be equaling to 6. However, when we actually shoot in this game, unfortunately enough, it's only going to be shooting from 3, and once again, it's going to be having a very similar mechanic to something like the Ka-52. It's a little unfortunate, but I do believe it's a very nice touch, which I was able to actually find out about these vehicles. Do let me know in the comment section if you think the developers should actually change them. Now, the next one is going to be about a plane. As you guys already know, a lot of the planes in War Tycoon actually have an internal cannon a lot of the time. For example, the F-35, it does have exactly that, because before we are actually able to shoot with our cannon, there's like this little pod which is also basically going to be opening, which is pretty cool. However, if we go ahead and actually move into FreeCam, I'd like to show you guys the insides of the F-35. Now, let me quickly go ahead and show you guys, but when we look inside of the vehicle, there is basically like kind of like a hole in the design, which basically allows the gun to actually be able to be placed inside of the vehicle. However, you might really be wondering why I'm explaining you this, and the reason why is because I personally believe, and this is just a theory by the way, is that the SR-72 Darkstar was originally planned to actually have a cannon which was internal, much like the other vehicles in this game. Because if we take a look on how unrealistic the Seahawk is, I don't think this will be as big of a stretch. But if we go ahead and actually move right inside of this vehicle, because as you guys can see right here in the vehicle on the left, there is literally a hole, which is actually pretty weird, because most of these vehicles do not have this inside of their design, and I do find this quite interesting. It's a possibility that they just decided to remove an internal gun because they thought it would be a little too unrealistic, or the vehicle would just be too OP with having 8 missiles and a main cannon. But again, this is just a theory, and this is what I believe about the SR-72 Darkstar. But once again, since the Seahawk is really unrealistic, I believe something like this would not be a stretch either. Now, moving into the next one, and this is going to be about the Maus and the E-100. So as we all know, the Maus and the E-100 are both pretty okay vehicles in this game, but they do really get outclassed by stuff like planes, and they're so easy to actually be killed by that. However, our tanks are easily able to deal with it. But the reason why I'm explaining all of this is because the Maus and E-100 are kind of in need of a countermeasure to be able to deal with these vehicles. However, if we take a look at other games like War Thunder, this vehicle is actually able to use smoke. And even if we take a look right here, this is actually modeled in, and this is where the smoke grenades would kind of be shooting the smoke out in front of the vehicle essentially, which is a very nice touch by the developers that they actually included this on the model. However, the smoke in War Tycoon is actually not functional, unfortunately. Let me show you guys, this is going to be exactly the same thing for even the E-100. Yeah, as you guys can see right here, once again, there is exactly the same thing modeled in, and this is pretty much what you use if you want to deploy smoke with these World War II tanks. And by the way, once again, they're all prototypes. However, let's take a look on how this actually looked like in War Thunder when the smoke was actually used. You can clearly see that you are able to launch smoke grenades from this place, and I do believe this to be pretty cool, and I really wish War Tycoon to actually be adding smoke to these World War II tanks. I feel like as a whole it would make them a lot better and much more viable in this meta, because they would actually be able to somewhat defend themselves from infinite missile spam. Now the next one is going to be about the F-35. So as all of us already know, the F-35 is a pretty good vehicle as of this current meta, and it is still up there. However, the one important thing about it is that it does have a unique feature which I do believe could be added to it. As you guys can see right here, what it does have strapped to it is going to be an electro-optical targeting system, which this part of the plane is actually used for just being able to guide missiles and being able to guide bombs. And overall, it makes it a lot easier for the pilot to understand their surroundings and etc. So I feel like it would be very cool for the F-35 to actually have this feature functional, because I feel like VTOL as a whole doesn't really make this vehicle that unique, since there's already a lot of VTOL planes. But I do feel like if they were to add an optical targeting system, that would be very cool to actually have for the F-35. Since it's already modeled in, I feel like working on such a feature would not be that hard to actually make. I do feel like this would be a very great feature to overall have in the game, and it would once again make F-35 a unique plane. And by the way, I also want to mention is that this was put in suggestions quite a lot, and I have also seen a lot of people just overall requesting for F-35 to receive this and actually make it usable. And now moving into the last one, I don't know if I already told you guys about this, but I will be saying it once again and the last time. The Boxer has exactly two weapons, an explosive gun and a gun mounted on top of it. However, with this is not its only weaponry that is actually modeled onto the vehicle, because by the way, the Boxer CRV also has a coaxial machine gun. As you guys can see right here where I'm pointing at it, this is the coaxial machine gun which the Boxer has. However, unfortunately enough, we're just not able to use it in game, which is pretty sad, but I feel like this wouldn't be too much of a stretch to add and program in. Really, developers, this is not that hard. I really hope they're gonna add something like that to the Boxer, because why would they not? But yeah, anyway, for the time being, do let me know in the comment section down below how many of these you actually knew about. Personally, I feel like this is a really cool video, but do tell me if there are some features which I actually missed in this video that were actually modeled in on the vehicles which are just not usable. I will be very interested in actually making a part 2 to this, since I do believe that this is a lot more cooler and unique type of content on this channel. I haven't done something like this in quite a while, so I'll be very interested in once again doing a part 2. Anyway, for the time being, I'll see you guys next video. Have a greatest day, and thank you so much to my channel members.